Parents, how do you feel about putting pictures of your children online? If you're like many, your social media account is littered with pictures of your special snowflakes. But increasingly, parents are opting out of the practice entirely. Here to tell us why she believes we should all opt out is Morgan Ames, a postdoctoral researcher at the UC Berkeley Center for Science, Technology, Medicine, and Society. Hi, Morgan. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
So, Morgan, you don't post any pictures of your children on social media at all. Is that correct?
I do not.
And why is that?
There are a couple of reasons. One is that I feel like I have a very young child. He's too young to really understand what I'm doing, and I can't really ask his permission. Some of the consequences I see of posting pictures online are these pictures can be reused, they can be saved by other people, they can be aggregated into data profiles that can be sold to marketers, and I'd rather my child manage that process himself when the time comes.
Now, that makes perfect sense. There are, of course, two sides to this. Many parents, for instance, who live far from their families, and they say the online sharing helps them feel connected to their families. Is that a bad thing? Should they rethink that?
It's a totally valid concern. My family lives far away myself, and I do send them photos, generally through email or sometimes physical photos. I tend to give text updates instead to some of my friends on social media, and I make sure that the group is a very closed group. I often don't use my child's full name. I'll use just initials or a pseudonym. But I think connecting is a really important part that all parents really have to deal with. I think I just draw the line when it comes to photos because they're such content-rich things and can be reused in potentially harmful ways.
So is there then a responsible way of posting, or you believe there really isn't because it's so beyond our control?
I think every parent really has to decide for themselves. If you are posting to a network, for example, that you're very sure is closed and will remain closed, you know who is there and who is going to be seeing the photos, then I think that's a reasonable compromise to make that many parents will probably make, because making these connections with other parents is very important. That said, I think that it can be hard to know what will happen 5 years or 10 years in the future, what will happen to these services, if they'll still be around, if they will potentially resell some of our data, which is often allowed by terms of service. So I think it's really worth exercising some caution in this area.
You bring up some very, very valid points, and you also mentioned earlier it worries you that your children can't give their consent. So I wonder if we do post pictures, because I must admit I do post a few pictures of my children, at what age should we ask our children if it's okay with them?
I think it varies a lot by child. I think as young as probably 5 or 6, you can start trying to explain to them that these photos will be visible to, you can talk a little bit about audience, and you can start asking permission then, and you can kind of gauge whether they have a sense of what that means.
Whether they can understand it. Do you think maybe that's starting at age 8 or 9?
I think by 8 or 9, kids have a pretty good sense, especially if their parents are active online. They have a sense of what's out there. And I think that asking permission can be a really important part of developing a good critical media sensibility, of really understanding the benefits and the risks of being in this space and having photos, having a presence, developing an identity, what that means. So I think it could be valuable potentially, but I think it is worth having some caution both for kids and for parents.
A lot to think about for sure. Morgan Ames, thank you so much for that.
I'm very happy to join.